Hello, I'm Susan Woods of Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions. Thank you for your time. We are still on step 15 of starting nonprofits. Step 15 walks you through the steps to completing all of the parts that pertain to the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to complete part 4, which is your activities. So again, we are on step 15, part 5 of the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. And we are learning how to complete part 5 of that step. As a reminder, the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, which I refer to as the Form 1023, is the official application used to apply for 501c3 status from the IRS. The Form 1023 is the long version of the application that requires the completion of all the documents, which are called supplemental responses, you've learned to complete thus far. The Form 1023 includes 10 parts and 8 schedules. It allows you to really explain the community services you plan to provide through a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, again, includes 10 parts. Part 1 is identification of applicant. Part 2 is organizational structure. Part 3, required provisions in your organizing document. And part 4, which we're going to talk about today, is your activities. Part 5, compensation and other financial arrangements. Part 6, financial data. Part 7, foundational classification. Part 8, effective date. Part 9, annual filing requirements. And Part 10, signature and upload checklist. These are the parts of the new Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption that the IRS started using back on January 1st, 2020. So we've been using this new version for over a year now. These are the parts that you will have to complete in order to apply for 501c3 status from the Internal Revenue Service. As I mentioned, we are on step 15 of the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, and we are focusing on part 4, which is your activities. As you can see here at the very top left corner of the screen, I'm showing you the Form 1023, which was revised on January 2020. And part 4 says your activities. So what do you complete? What is required? I'm going to talk about what's required now. And then, of course, as I always do, I'm going to actually go to the application and walk you through completing part 4. But I'm just going to give you an overview right now. Part 4 is the heart of your application because it tells the story about what you want to do in your community and why your organization deserves 501c3 status. This part used to be called the narrative description of activities, but that name changed in January of 2020 when the IRS transitioned to an electronic platform to submit your Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption away from the traditional mail in requirements to submit your application. In other words, up until January of 2020, we submitted applications by mailing them to the IRS. I've been completing application packets for clients now since 2010. So for a full 10 years, I would create the application packets for clients, mail the hard copy application to the clients, and then they would sign all of the documents, attach their payment, and then mail it to the IRS themselves. This new process requires us to complete the same documents, but instead of mailing them, we then submit them online. So the name changed when the process changed. So now part 4 is called your activities. So what are you required to do here? You are required to describe your past, present, and planned activities. Do not refer to or repeat the purpose in your organizing document. For each past, present, or planned activity, include information that answers the following questions. A, what is the activity? What are you planning to do in the community? B, who conducts the activity? C, where is the activity conducted? D, what percentage of your time is allocated to the activity? E, how is the activity funded? For example, donations, fees, etc. And what percentage of your overall expenses is allocated to this activity? And F, how does the activity further your exempt purposes? So, again, in this section, the IRS expects you to list in detail your past, present, and your planned activities. Say, for example, a person wants to start an after school program for youth. Here, you would have 3 categories that will answer the same questions A through F. In the past section, what have you done in the past to operate this after school program? What is the activity? You would put the activity was operating a program for youth after school. B, who conducted the activity? C, where was the activity conducted? So on and so forth. Then in your next section, you will have present activities. What are you presently doing pertaining to that particular activity? And the third section of your activities will be called planned activities. And in that section, you will explain what you plan to do if you receive 501c3 status. In the planned activity section, should be longer than the other 2 activity sections because you want to spell out exactly what you plan to do if you get 501c3 status. So that's the general layout of this section. Now, the next part of the application may or may not be relevant to your nonprofit organization because the next section in the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is called schedules. There are schedules for specific purposes that you have to provide additional information for. For example, Schedule A will be completed if you're planning to start a church because there's certain things that you have to answer in that section of the application if you're planning to start a church. Schedule B will be completed if you plan to start a school, a college, or university. Schedule C you will complete if you plan to start a hospital or medical research organization, and so on and so forth. But you want to know what each schedule means or the purposes of each schedule because if you, for example, plan to do low income housing, which I'm seeing a lot of people do lately, then you would need to complete a Schedule F. If you're planning to provide some type of scholarship for students to go to college or whatever the case may be, then you will complete a Schedule H. That's additional work that you will have to complete to submit your application for recognition of exemption if you are starting an organization for one of these purposes on the screen here. Okay, so now, as I said, I always demonstrate whenever I do a class or a session, I demonstrate actually walking you through the steps of completing the application. So let me go ahead and complete the demonstration for you for part 4 of the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, which deals with your activities. Your activities, once again, are the heart of your application, the reason that you want 501c3 status. So here we go. Let me pause the sharing here for just one moment because I need to switch over to the application I was telling you about so that I can share the application that I was telling you about. So I'm switching over to make sure that I get to the application, and we're going to talk about it, of course. Okay, now you should be seeing the pay.gov application for recognition of exemption site. I've gone ahead and moved to part 4 of this application. Now, remember I said back in January 2020, the IRS transitioned to an electronic platform to submit the application package? Well, this is it. It's called pay.gov. And in order for you to submit your Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption to the IRS, you have to establish a pay.gov account. You have to establish a pay.gov account. So all you have to do is go to pay.gov and follow the steps to creating an account. And I have a video that will walk you through the steps to doing that. But that's the first thing you have to do. Now, I have, like I said, I've gone ahead and I've forwarded to part 4, your activities, so that we can talk about your activities here. Okay, so here is the same information I just discussed, right? About describing completely and in detail your past, present, and planned activities. Do not refer to or repeat the purposes in your organizing document. What's your organizing document? What is that? An organizing document is the document that you submitted to the Secretary of State's office in the state in which you plan to operate to file your articles of incorporation. Once again, your organizing document is the document that you created to file your articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State's office in the state in which you plan to operate. So the direction here is not to refer to, don't say, well, refer to the purposes in my organizing document. Don't say that here. Or don't repeat what you've already put in your organizing document. In this section, in the past, we would just mail in the information, like I said before, but now you are required to type the information in this section. And the best thing to do is, if I were you, I would put sections in here, like to identify what you're talking about, because you have to answer these questions for each section. So you have the past section, right? Okay. Then you have a section for the present, right? Then you have a section for the what? Planned, right? Past activities, present activities, and planned activities. And as I mentioned before, the planned activities should be the longest. Now, here are some additional stipulations over here. You have a minimum of, see, I wasn't even finished yet. Gives me a prompt that I have not keyed in 100 characters. I was getting ready to say that you have to have a minimum of 100 characters and a maximum of 5,000 characters. Okay. So this warns me that I don't have enough characters. And we know that characters are letters, numbers, and symbols, right? And spaces. Letters, numbers, symbols, and spaces. So let me add more characters here to try to get to the minimum of 100. That's one thing I do like about this new platform, because if you make a mistake, like I just did, you will receive an error. It won't let you move forward until you correct that error. So that is a benefit of the electronic platform. I'm just going to be honest. I really wasn't thrilled with the change, to this new platform, because to be honest, who wants to always learn something new? But in this nonprofit industry, you have to be willing to learn something new all the time. So in order for me to be in the business of helping people start nonprofit organizations, of course I have to stay current in my knowledge. And as a matter of fact, you can't even mail anything to the IRS. If you mail an application to the IRS now, it will not be processed. So you may as well learn the new system if you want your application processed. And I'm just typing something here to get my characters. I wish they did a countdown on the characters. That would be maybe something they'll add later. Some systems um, allow you to count down the characters that you're using. So that may be coming soon. Let me see if I have enough characters. If not, as I scroll down, I'm not going to be able to continue. So now it's thinking I have all of the information that I need in here. So you have another little prompt. It says, please review your narrative to ensure you describe completely and in detail your past, present, and planned activities. Ensure you provided the percentage of your total time allocated to each activity and that the time percentages add up to 100%. Okay, I'm going to say that I've done that. And now I'm going to click on continue. Guess what? That is not all of part 4. As you can see here, it says part 4, your activities continued. So you may as well take a little break now, because part 4 is the heart of your application, as I mentioned before, and it's the longest part of your application too. So you may as well take a little break and come back, because now we're going to continue with part 4, your activities, the second part of it. This is the longest part of your application and the most important. So now it's asking you, enter the 3-character NTEE code that best describes your activities. This was not a requirement in the old version, in the old paper-based version. We didn't have to do this. So when I first completed an application using this new platform, I was like, what in the world is this? Well, another thing that I like about it is you just click on a question mark and you get an answer to your question. An NTEE code is a 3-character series of letters and numbers that generally describes a type of organization. Enter the code that best describes your organization from the list of NTEE codes located in the Appendix D. For more information and more detailed definitions of these codes developed by the National Center for Charitable Statistics, NCCS, visit the Urban Institute NCCS website at nccs.urban.org. Tip: NTEE codes are also used for purposes other than identification of organizations described in Section 501c3. Therefore, all codes in the list don't necessarily correspond to a 501c3 purpose. So you might say, I still don't know what code I need to use. Well, then you're going to have to go to the list and find the appropriate code for the type of nonprofit organization you want to start. I know the code for mine is B90. So I just click on B90. Or look at here. Or if you want the IRS to select the NTEE code that best describe your organization or your activities rather, You just check there. So if you say, you know what, I don't want to go out and find the code. I just want them to determine what kind of code I need based on the information I provide. Just click here. Do any of your programs limit the provision of goods, services, or funds to a specific individual or group of specific individuals? For example, answer yes if goods, services, or funds are provided only for a particular individual, your members, individuals who work for a particular employer, or graduates of a particular school. If yes, explain the limitation and how recipients are selected for each program. So let's say I don't know what this means. Once again, click on the question mark. And I just give you a few moments to read this question mark. Okay. So it says if programs are limited to specific individuals, describe how you select those individuals or identify those individuals. If programs are available only for members, describe the membership criteria, any membership dues, and any different membership levels, and the benefits each membership level receives. So this gives you additional information. So let's say that I say, okay, yes, that applies to me. You click on yes, and then you have the space here to provide the information that's required. If the answer is no, you don't get a space. Same thing here. Question 4 on the part 4. Do any individuals who receive goods, services, or funds through your programs have a family or business relationship with any officer, director, or trustee, or with any of your highest compensated employees or highest compensated independent contractors? If yes, explain how these related individuals are eligible for goods, services, or funds. So now the IRS is trying to figure out if you are going to have a conflict of interest situation. Again, if you're not sure, click on the question mark for additional information. Describe any business or family relationship between individuals who receive goods, services, or funds through your programs and any their officers, directors, trustees, highest compensated employees, or independent contractors. Now, this note here that I'm getting ready to read is very important. It causes so much confusion for some people when they think about how they're going to be compensated. For purposes of this form, meaning the Form 1023 application of recognition of exemption, highest compensated employees or independent contractors are persons to whom you pay over $100,000 of reportable compensation, including compensation from related organizations. So when you see the reference to highest compensated employees or independent contractors, we're talking about people who are going to be paid or are being paid over $100,000 of reportable compensation. Why is that important? That's important because in the past, the highest compensated employees pertain to people who made $50,000 or more. The IRS changed this level when they changed to the new platform. When we get to our next section in financial data report, that's going to be even more important. So just put that in your memory bank for now. I'm going to click on no. And then number 5, do you or will you support or oppose candidates in political campaigns in any way? The you is the organization, not you personally. Remember, your organization is always separate from your personal life. So will this organization support or oppose candidates? Well, if yes, explain. Click on the question mark, and I'm not going to read all of this, but I would advise you to, if you think your organization should support or oppose political campaigns. So for now, I'm going to put no. Do you or will you attempt to influence legislation? Who is you? Who is you? Who are you? Excuse me. The you here again pertains to the organization, not you as a person. If you do, explain how you attempt to influence legislation. If you're not sure, always click on the question mark and read more information. But normally the answer is no. So now we've completed this section of part 4. And I'm going to click on continue. Guess what? We're not done. Part 4 continues again. Part 4, your activities continue. Now, this section deals with questions 7, 8, and 9. So let's take a look. Question 7, do you or will you, your organization, not you, do you or will you own, publish, or have rights in music, literature, tapes, artworks, choreography, scientific discoveries, or other intellectual properties? Let me read that again. Do you or will you, not you, your organization, publish, own, or have rights in music, literature, tapes, artworks, choreography, scientific discoveries, or other intellectual property? If yes, describe who owns or will own any copyrights, patents, or trademarks, whether fees are or will be charged, how the fees are determined, and how many items are or will be produced, distributed, and marketed. Look at this question thoroughly, because you might, depending upon your organization, you might have intellectual property that belongs to your organization. If you go back to the after school program for youth, if you go back to that, let's say that you create this fantastic curriculum for your after school program for the organization. Thereby, the organization will own it. The organization will have the copyright for the content and the trademark for the logo. And if it's an invention, a patent. If that's the case, you have to answer all the parts of this question. So if you plan to do that, learn more about the question, get more detail about the question, right? From here, I clicked on the question mark. And if that's your case, click on yes. And then here, you can explain what's needed. And as I move my mouse around this section, it pops up with what you need to include in this section. But if you don't believe that you're going to have intellectual property, then click on no. Question 8, do you or will you, not you, the organization, provide educational information to the general public on budgeting, personal finance, financial literacy, saving and spending practices, the sound use of consumer credit, and or assist individuals and families with financial problems such as credit card debt, foreclosure, by providing them with counseling? If yes, explain. This is very popular. I've helped several people complete application packets who were planning to provide financial literacy training. So in that case, you will have to answer yes, but let's learn more about it. Click on a question mark and you can learn more about it. These activities involve the education of the consumer on budgeting, personal finance, financial literacy, mortgage disclosure assistance, or other consumer credit areas. These activities may also involve assisting the consumer in consolidating debt and negotiating between debtors and creditors to lower interest rates and waive late and over limit fees. If you answer yes, you may be subject to the requirements of Section 501Q. So search for Section 501Q on irs.gov for information on these requirements and whether they apply to you. So if you know you're going to do that, these are some extra steps you have to take. And you will click yes, and then you will explain what you plan to do. If you don't, click no. The next question under part 4, your activities. Do you or will you make grants, loans, or other distributions to organizations outside of your own? If yes, describe the type and purpose of the grants, loans, or distributions, how you select your recipients, including submission requirements, such as grant proposals or application forms, and the criteria you use or will use to select recipients. Also, describe how you ensure the grants, loans, and other distributions are or will be used for their intended purposes, including whether you require periodic or final reports on the use of funds and any procedures you have if you identify that funds are not being used for their intended purposes. Finally, describe the records you keep with respect to grants, loans, and other distributions you, not you, your organization, make, and identify any recipient organizations and any relationships between you and the recipients. If you don't plan to do any of those things, then you just click on no. But if you do, click yes, and then you have a space here to describe your grant, loan, and other distribution programs in detail. If no, click on no. And now you've done, you've completed this part 4, your activities, questions 7, 8, and 9. So click on continue. Guess what? You're not done. Part 4, your activities continue. Question 10. Do you or will you operate in a foreign country or countries? If yes, name each foreign country and region within each country in which you do or will operate and describe your operations in each one. If no, continue to line 11. So, I've helped people who started nonprofits in the United States in order to provide services in another country. So I will have to click on, I'm going to click on a question mark to get more information. A foreign country is a country other than the United States, its territories and possessions, and the District of Columbia. Okay, good to know. So if I were to do that, you click on yes, and then you'll provide more information. Not only in this field, but you will also have to complete 10A, 10B, and 10C. And I do have experience with completing the OFAC list. It's more than a notion when you plan to operate a nonprofit in the United States to provide services in another country. There are steps that you have to complete, very specific, complex steps. And it does pertain to OFAC. But if you don't, just click on no and continue. Guess what? We're still on part 4. I told you part 4 is the heart of your application. That's why it's the longest part. This is the heart of your application. So let's go ahead and complete the next few questions. 11, what they call them? They don't call them questions, they call them lines. So line 11, line 12, line 13, line 14, line 15, line 16, line 17. So let's go ahead and do those. Line 11. Are you a sponsoring organization that maintains one or more donor advised funds? This is becoming very, very popular nowadays, the donor advised funds. If yes, please provide a complete description of your program, including the specific advice that such donors may provide. Describe in detail the control you maintain or will maintain over the use of the funds. So let's learn more about that. You are a sponsoring organization of donor advised funds if you establish separate accounts that you own or control for a donor, whereby the donor or a donor advisor may make recommendations about the investments of or distributions from the account. See publication 557 for more information on the definitions of sponsoring organizations and donor advised funds. Caution: you can't sponsor a donor advised fund if you're a private foundation. So if someone says, I'm a philanthropist and I want to contribute to your after school program, however, I only want my funds to be allocated toward field trips, that's a donor advised fund scenario. So you have to decide on whether or not you want to be responsible for tracking an entirely separate account under your nonprofit organization to satisfy the requirements of donor advised funds. You have to weigh the cost versus the benefits of doing that. Normally, the answer here is no. Line 12. Do you or will you operate a school? Remember, I mentioned that schedules are additional requirements. This is a Schedule B. If you're going to operate a school, then you have to complete a Schedule B. So if you click here for more information, it tells you what a school is and gives you some examples of schools and some tips. Not going to read all of that. But if you plan to start a school, I will highly recommend that you read that information to learn more about it and then click on yes. And then if you click on yes, it says go to Schedule B. I'm not going to do that, but I just want to let you know if you were going to start a school, then you click on Schedule B, complete Schedule B. At the end of Schedule B, it will take you back to this page when you're finished. But I'm going to click on no. Line 13, is your principal purpose or function to provide hospital or medical care? Same thing. A Schedule C pertains to that. If you were going to do it, click on the question mark, learn more information about hospitals and medical research and all of that, and then click yes. And then it's going to say go to Schedule C. But we're going to say no to keep going. Line 14, do you or will you provide low income housing? If yes, complete Schedule F. Okay. So if you're planning to offer low income housing, and a lot of people do, especially for homeless veterans, I've done that before. Click here, learn more about it, learn more about low income housing, and yes, and go to Schedule F, complete Schedule F. At the bottom of Schedule F, you'll click on a button to come back to this page, but we're going to click on no. Line 15, do you or will you provide scholarships, fellowships, educational loans, or other educational grants to individuals, including grants for travel, study, or other similar purposes? If you are, complete Schedule 8, Section 1. Schedule 8, Section 1. Learn more about it by clicking on the question mark, read all of this information, and then click yes. And then you will go to Schedule H, complete the information required. At the bottom of Schedule 8, you'll come back to this page, but I'm going to click on no. Line 16, check any of the following fundraising activities that you will undertake. Check all that apply. If you plan to raise money, and I wish they would change this to check any of the following revenue generation strategies. That would make it easier to follow. But anyway, how do you plan to raise money is the bottom line. Do you plan to raise money using your website, mail, email, personal, or phone solicitations? Then you check here. If you plan to receive donations from another organization's website, click here. If you want to do some bingo, make sure you are allowed to by clicking on this button. and then you just read the information, because a lot of nonprofits play bingo to raise money, but just make sure you read the requirements before you do so. Normally, I don't check that one. Foundation. Yes, I'm going to solicit grants from foundations. I'm going to solicit grants from um, government agencies. If you plan to have other non bingo gaming activities to generate revenues, you will click here. If you have something else you want to do that's not listed, click other and then describe in this box here. Now, if you say, well, we're not going to engage in fundraising activities, then you would click this box and that would deselect all of the other ones up top. And believe it or not, there are some people who will not, who don't plan to have fundraising activities. They plan to self fund. Line 17, do you or will you engage in fundraising activities for other organizations? Are you going to help other organizations by fundraising for them through your organization? If yes, describe these arrangements, including the names or descriptions of the organizations for which you raise funds. So if I click on yes, I'm going to get a block here. If I click on no, I'm not going to get a block. And you notice there's not a question mark in front of yes. So I guess they feel that this line is self-explanatory. So now I'm going to click on continue. Finally, we're done. We are done with part 4. Now we're going into part 5, and I'm going to hold off on this part to another class. But I just wanted to let you know that we are done with part 4. So I'm going to pause the sharing. That was long, wasn't it? Yeah, because it's the heart of your application. So I'm going to pause the sharing so that I can switch back to the presentation. So just one moment. Thank you so much. I know that this is not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's important. It's so important. So thank you so much for your patience. Um, so I'm going to resume sharing. And here we are, we're back. So to wrap up, the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption includes 10 parts. We just learned how to complete part 4, the longest of the 10 parts, which is your activities, formerly known as a narrative description of activities. A little bit about me before we say goodbye. Again, I'm Susan Woods. I started a 501c3 nonprofit organization called Comprehensive Community Based Solutions in 2006. I operated it as the executive director for 10 years. I offered 2 programs over that 10-year period, and they were very successful. One was a program called Panorama Computer Learning, in which I traveled around to different libraries, different community centers, different churches, teaching middle aged people how to use the computer. And these were people who had been displaced when the manufacturing industry went bust in 2000, in the early 2000s. So I would travel around with laptop computers and teach them how to use Microsoft products. That was one program. The second program that I operated under Comprehensive Community Based Solutions was called the Emerging Leaders Mentorship Program for Black Male Youth. And in that program, Black men facilitated the classes and all of the activities and field trips for guys who participated in the program. I still have my nonprofit organization, but I don't offer any programs under it right now. But I'm going to maintain the status so that I don't lose it in case I would like to offer something else underneath my nonprofit umbrella in the future. I've earned 3 nonprofit management certificates, one from Duke University, one from Wake Forest University, and one from my alma mater, which is Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I'm also a 3-time graduate of Winthrop University. I earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, a Master of Arts in Teaching Business Education, and a Master of Business Administration degree. I teach in person classes and I offer online classes. Those classes include how to start a nonprofit, how to fund, how to manage, and how to sustain 501c3 nonprofit organizations. I also teach a class entitled how to reinstate 501c3 nonprofit organizations if you have lost your 501c3 status. And I teach an online grant writing masterclass to teach people grant writing skills through a self-paced class. Finally, I do complete the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption for clients across the United States. I complete the long version. I don't do the 1023 EZ. I've been providing this service since 2010, and to date, as of today, I have completed 142 application packets, and I have earned a 100% approval rating on behalf of my clients from the IRS. So it gives me great joy to know that I've helped people across the United States. I think I'm up to 18 states now out of the 50 states that I have helped people start nonprofits. If you want to learn more about my services, please just go to my website at www.trustsusanwoods.com because you can trust Susan Woods. Well, thank you for participating in this online session, part 4 of the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. I'm Susan Woods. If you would like for me to help you start a nonprofit organization, you can call me at 704-968-2769 or send me a text message. Or you can go to my website at trustsusanwoods.com, click on the reserve consultation link, and reserve a time so that we can talk about your nonprofit vision and ways I might be able to help you. Thank you once again. I'm Susan Woods, and have a great day.